Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be doing part 2 of the eyeshadow palette tag. So this was started by Samantha March and Allie Glines I think about a week and a half ago, and I've been trying to think of what answers I want to use since then and watching other people's and really excited. So I remember when they did the original one, it was like, I don't know, a little over a year ago I think, maybe 2 years ago, and I remember seeing it and being like, oh, I want to do this, but I didn't have a channel. So I thought of my answers, but I didn't actually do it, and my answers would definitely change since then. I still might do the first part one, just because there are different questions, and I like these kind of videos. So if you want to see if you want to see my answers to the first eyeshadow palette tag, let me know in the comments, and I will definitely do that. And then I know my friend Jamila just did this as well and tagged me saying I should do it, which I was already planning to, so that was just the push to do it today. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I am a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a soft spot for indie makeup and colorful makeup, and I have new videos every week, so I'd love to have you subscribe. I also just hit 500 subscribers, which I mentioned in my video the other day, but thank you so much. It really means a lot to me. I was really scared to start this channel, and the fact that less than 6 months in I'm already at 500 subscribers really is very validating and feels very great. So thank you so much. So the questions for this were a little hard, and there's a few places in here where there's a tie, and I'm sorry, I had to do it. So the first question is, what is your all-time favorite palette or an all-time favorite palette? It didn't really specify. And this is hard because I've only been doing makeup for a couple years now, and picking a favorite palette is really hard. I have pretty bad OCD, and I'm also a Libra and can't not make decisions to save my life. So this was hard, but when I thought, like, what is something that immediately, like, think about as, like, this is a favorite? Two palettes came to mind. They're both fairly new to me. They're not new palettes in general, but I got them at the end of last year, and they are staple palettes for me now, and, like, staple but also exciting, and that's why I picked them as my all-time favorite. So the first one is going to be Metropolis from Natasha to Nona. This is discontinued. I got it at the end of its life, and I am so happy I did. This is almost a perfect palette for me. I haven't used all of the shades. I've used most of them, but you can see, like, this cream to powder and, like, a couple of the, like, neutral mattes I haven't really used that much. But I adore this. This is my perfect kind of grungy, earthy palette. You've got blues, you've got teals, you've got greens. These olivey shades up here are my favorites, and I reach for them the most, especially like these two shimmers, like this olive and then this like duochrome olivey gold. Like, these are perfect. I think that's Orium and Shield. And these, they're so pretty. The blue shimmer, gorgeous, my favorite color of blue. You've got golds, you've got bronzes, you've got some red, you know, warm earthy tones. Like, this I wanted for a long time, but I just couldn't justify spending $120, $129 on a palette. But I had 20% off. It was the end of its life, and I just did it, and I have zero regrets. This has been a go-to palette for me since I got it in November, so only 3 months, but still. And it's just, these are the kind of tones I gravitate towards all the time, so that's why it was immediately like, that might be my all-time favorite. And if I needed to pick one palette to use for like 6 months or something, or a whole year, it would probably be this one, because I can do daily friendly looks, I can do colorful looks, I can do warm, I can do cool, I can do all kinds of stuff, and I really like versatility in a palette, so love this. The second palette that immediately came to mind was my first Pat McGrath palette, my first mothership, and that is Midnight Sun. So I picked this as my first Pat McGrath because I thought it would be, it was on sale and I had a gift card, so I didn't pay for it at all, but I also got it. I think it was $100, normally $125. I paid like 90 something and I had a $100 gift card. So, but I love this. Again, earthy. You've got some more neutral brown mattes. This is a really great deepening kind of charcoal shade. You've got an olive green and a bronze, and they're both in a really nice creamy formula that you can just put on and blend the edges of. And so this is like daily shades for me. Like this part of the palette is, I could wear this every day, zero issues. But then you've also got these shades. This Astral shade is so sparkly and beautiful. This one's also in Divine Rose 1, which I don't have, but that is, she did repeat it in there. And then you've got a copper and a periwinkle, and I am nothing but a slut for terracottas, olive greens, and blues. And so this has all three. So I've also been very into just these kind of generic bronzes that, like, I don't know, something about bronze and taupe lately just speaks to me. So the formulas in this are great, and I'm so happy this was my first mothership, and I now have 4. And this, spoiler, I haven't done a ranking yet of my Pat McGrath palettes, but spoiler, this is probably my favorite. So the next question is, what is a new favorite? And this had to go to the Nars Climax palette. So I've talked about this a lot on my channel in the last month, but it just has been really calling to me, and you can definitely see a theme between the first 3 palettes. You've got a blue that I could not dupe anywhere else. You've got green, got an olivey shade, you've got a bronze. I mean, there's really no surprise that this is a new favorite. Got this, and the last time it restocked. I don't know if it will be restocked again. I hope so, because it's great. This is just so good. This is what I took with me to Canada this last weekend, because it's just such a good staple everyday palette, but also fun with like the green and the really pretty blue. Like, I don't have another blue like this one. It's kind of slate. So that is definitely a new favorite for me. So the next category was a palette you keep for the memories. And I don't really, like, when watching other people's, they were like, this is the palette I got engaged in, or this was my first Natasha to Nona palette, or my first this, or like my first big purchase. I don't really have a lot of those kind of memories attached to most of these, but one that I don't just keep it for the memories, I still use it pretty regularly, is the first Haus Labs palette. So this was the first palette I bought that wasn't like NYX or something like drugstore. It was $30-something, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna spend $34 on a palette. That's so much money. Now look at me, 2 years later. But I was so excited when I got it, and I wore it every day for months. I forsake all other palettes for this one, and I still really love it. It's still a good palette. I think it's highly underrated, which is another category on here. It's the only one that I basically hit pan on. This brown shade is almost hit pan. And then these 2 duochromes are really beautiful. Like, this is, you can see the flip pretty strongly. It goes from like a peach to that more pink rose gold shade. Like, even in the pan, you can see the flip. Some of these shimmers, like these aren't my favorites. This one's pretty nice. These aren't my favorites, but they're still good. And this is one of the best matte blacks. I should revisit these shimmers now that I've been more into subtle shimmers lately. But yeah, I will hold on to this forever. I love Lady Gaga. She's meant a lot to me as a queer person in the last decade. And it seems fitting that this was my first like not drugstore palette that I bought, and I still love it. So the next category is underrated palettes. So there's a few things I could put in here, including that Haus Labs, or really any Haus Labs palette. I feel like, especially in the YouTube sphere, Haus Labs is just really underrated. But I'm gonna have to do But I'm gonna have to do the same palette that my friend Jamila did, and that is the Natasha to Nona Zendo palette. So this got a lot of hate on YouTube, some hate on Instagram. My friend Steven hates this palette. But this is probably my most used Natasha to Nona palette other than Metropolis now. Again, it's earthy, it's combining warm and cool shades. It's so pretty and so well thought out. People hated it because the warm and cool, I don't think people like that as much as I do. Also, the shimmers aren't super high impact. Like, they're beautiful, but you can see they're a little more, like the blue is pretty bright. This is the duochrome, and it's not the strongest shifting duochrome, and this is, you know, a little more satin. I think this was the palette that started making me appreciate more subdued shimmers. And I don't feel like I have to have something super sparkly every day. Like today, I'm wearing something very shifty and colorful, but I don't need that every day. And this has also been a go-to travel palette. Last summer, went to LA, went to New York, went back home to New York. And this is what I took because I can easily do a neutral brown. I can throw one of the copper shades, or if I want just a really subtle, I can sparkliness, I can put the duochrome Yama on there. I can use this like army green to deepen things up. I can do something blue. I can do something like red and pink and peach. You could do, you know, neutral brown with blue shimmer. You like peach. You could do calm the peach shade with the dark brown and do blue shimmers. You could do all kinds of things with this. I think the formulas in this are great. I know Steven really hated this breath shade. I have no problems with it, so I don't know if it's a palette to palette thing, but I think this is one of her most underrated palettes, and I think just a really underrated palette. I think sometimes people get in the mindset that everything has to be super sparkly, but like, she doesn't always do super sparkly. Her big 28 pen palettes aren't the most sparkly. Also, like, people love Charlotte Tilbury and she doesn't have sparkly, shifty shadows. So like, you know, I think you have to put things in context, and I think this was a great palette that was definitely underrated. Okay, so the next palette is something that is not a favorite, but can't get rid of. And that's gonna go to this one I knew immediately. This was my kimchi palette. So this is the Rainbow Sharks palette. It's a good palette. It's not a bad palette, but it's not a favorite. It's a very neutral palette. It's also huge. They do sell a mini that's like it's like this big. But it's a good palette. It's neutral brown-y mattes. You've got like a burgundy matte, a black. You've got, you know, standard neutrally shimmers. You've got copper, champagne, a darker copper, you know, a gold. And then you've got some fun pops of pink and blue. This grape shade is really beautiful. Pink with like the gold shift. Love that one. That and Champs are like, and Penny are like the ones I've used the most. It's a good formula. It's not the most pigmented, and it's not, I don't know, it's not my favorite formula, but it's still nice. So but because it's so neutral, I don't reach for it very often, but it's also not bad enough to get rid of, and it's also so cute, and I just love it. And it's like kind of a collector's thing for me. Plus I love kimchi, so definitely not one of my favorites, but I could never get rid of this. So the next one is favorite collab, and I'm gonna have to say this is a tie as well, because I just could not pick, and sadly both of these are discontinued. So the first one that came to mind was the Club Nebula palette with Kaleidos, and the second is the whole Odin's Eye Legendary Diversity collection, but specifically the Giant Wolves palette. I love the other two quite a lot, but this is like my favorite colors in the palette, so it bumps it up a little bit more. Club Nebula I've talked about on here a lot. This was one of my favorite palettes of the last year. I adore this. I love the like sparkly duochromes over here, and multi-chrome. One of these is kind of multi-chrome. You've got a couple regular shimmers. These are probably the best dark mattes that I've ever used, and it's just, I love the Kaleidos formula. This is even better than some of their other stuff, and I think just Angelica did an amazing job, and I'm so glad this won't be around forever, because eventually my palette's not gonna work very well, and I'm just gonna be very sad. And then the second in that is the Giant Wolves palette, which I'm really sad I didn't get at launch, but I did get it during Black Friday, and I adore this palette. Again, you've got green, you've got blue, you've got an olivey gold up here, you've got like kind of purpley blue shimmers. You've got a multi-chrome that's just so beautiful, and the formula is really great. I think Odin's Eye has just been progressively getting better and better with every launch, and this is definitely their best. And I think Annette did an outstanding job curating this. I think all three collaborators did, but you know, Tina's is very bright and colorful, and I don't go for bright, colorful things that often. I like them, but it's not my go-to. And then warm neutrals and Judy's, I love that. It just screams fall to me, but this screams me to me. So this one had to win. The next category is 2021 favorite. So some of these, if you've watched my favorites of 2021, you would have seen some of these already, but when I had to pick one palette, I think it has to go to the holiday palette from Pat McGrath. I don't know if this is still around, I hope so, but I think it is. It's just so, you can see my phone, it's just so pretty and so well done. This is another palette that I've had to stop myself from using all the time because I just want to keep using it, especially this shade here. This is Bronze Nova, that's what I thought, but I had to double check because I don't trust myself. This Bronze Nova shade is just so beautiful. I think this is a great, like, there's only 4 mattes, but they were thought of really well. You've got, you know, a caramel brown, a dark brown, 2 different kind of pinky shades. I want colorful mattes from Pat McGrath, and I think this could have had a couple of those, but the shimmers in this, all of them are great. I know it doesn't have any of her special astral shades or anything, but like, this is good enough that I ended up buying one for my best friend. So, and she's been loving it since. Like, she tried it after Christmas when I gave it to her, and she was just like, okay, I understand the hype. I get it. Like, it's just so good, and I can't wait to see what they do next year. So the next palette is one that you didn't expect to love. So this is one I expected to like. I thought I would like it. I saw it in Sephora, thought it looked beautiful, but I was like, I don't know. It looks fine. I don't need to get it. And then when I finally did get it, I was like, oh, this might be my favorite neutral palette now. And that is Natasha Denona Gold. When I finally got this, I understood, and I love this palette so much. Like, I knew I would like it, but I didn't think that I would love it this much and that it would become my favorite neutral palette. You've got mustard tones, you've got camel tones, you've got some darker shades, you've got a nice bronze, again, you've got golds. Natasha does a lot of golds, but then you've got these topper shades up here, the duochrome, and then these two. It's just a perfect everyday palette that also has enough blue, green, and mustard in it that it works. It's like the perfect neutral palette for an olive. And so that's why I knew I would like it, but I didn't expect I would love it this much. So the next category is a palette that sparks joy, and this is another tie. The first one is gonna be the Sigil Inspired Gazelle palette. One, because I could only get the little one, so it's very wee and it's adorable, but it's also just so pretty, and olives made for olive skin. So you've got a pale olive brown, you've got an olive green, and then you've got all of the shimmers, except for this one. So these 3 are all olivey shimmers, and then this is described as the color of the morning sky, and it really is. It's blue, it's pink, it's gold, it's just so pretty, and it just makes me happy. I really wish I had the full size because it just makes me so happy and I love it. It's just perfect. The second palette that sparked joy that I thought of is the El Barrio from Terra Moon. So this is no longer available, but all the shades inside are as singles. You just can't buy them as a palette. I think you can even buy them as a bundle, just the palette's gone. And it's just so bright. It's such a good palette. Like the mattes are pigmented, but blend nicely. The shimmers are beautiful. This Mi Gente shade is such an interesting green. And so it sparks joy in that it's bright and colorful, which I love, but also it's very much that Hispanic culture, Mexican American culture. I don't know if the owner is, I think they're based in Florida, so they might also be like Puerto Rican or something else, but there's just something that speaks to me. And I love the celebration of their culture and maybe our shared culture that like just speaks to me. Like El Barrio means neighborhood. And it's just, the theme of it really makes me happy. And I really enjoy seeing Latin American and Mexican American culture celebrated in things like this. So that's why that one had to also be here. Okay, so the last two are the newest palette in collection and the first palette used in 2022. So the newest is, so the newest palette in my collection, there's actually two. So the technical newest is the Peacock palette that I'm wearing on my eyes, but like it literally got here today, like 4 or 5 hours ago. So it is very much the newest in my collection. The video for this is already live. I like immediately filmed and posted it and then started doing other film things, which is why I'm in the same outfit and makeup in 3 videos. But I love this. I'm really excited to keep playing with it. I haven't actually worn some of these shades, like these 2 metallics on the lid I haven't worn yet, but really love this. And then the most recent before that I have used all of and used multiple times is the new Nomad palette. So I did want to mention that since I haven't used all of this yet. And that's the new Whistler palette. I have a video up on this. I love this. I mentioned it a lot lately. It's so pretty. The formula is one of their best. I don't know if they've been improving it, but it seems like a little better than their already good formula. And it's just so pretty and so well thought out. And I love this. If you're interested, like I said, before I did get this in PR, and I do have a discount code. It's not an affiliate code, it's just a discount code, and that is the BONES, and that'll save you 10%. So this is my other newest that I've used everything of. And then the first palette I used in 2022 is, I know this because I filmed with it, and that is the Love for Sale palette from House Labs. I also just talked about this in another video in my talking of my January palettes, but this is a really great palette. This could also go under underrated palettes. I already think their formula was good before. This is even better. They now make this in Italy versus I think the United States. And yeah, it's a neutral palette, but it's pigmented, but not overly so. It's blendable, it builds on itself pretty well, so you can get a lot of pigment if you need or want. The shimmers are really top notch, like that creamy one and done for some of them. Some of them are more foiled. It's got this really beautiful topper shade that like, when you try to pick it up, it looks like you have nothing, and then you swipe it on your eyes and it just lives this like wet sparkle that it's so pretty. It's kind of like the shade Kava from Gold. So you can see Kava is right here, and here's this one. So you can see they're not exactly the same, but they're a very similar kind of topper. So that's the only thing I can really compare it to. And then everything else in here is just really well done. And This was the first one I used this year, and I'm really happy I got it. And I think this also falls under the underrated. So especially, they do sales pretty regularly. I got this for like 40% off. So watch out for sales. I should have a community tab soon, so I will be able to post that stuff. But I think especially when they do a sale, I would grab this if it intrigues you at all. So those were my picks for the Eyeshadow Palette Tag Part 2. Let me know what you think, and let me know of your picks. If you don't have a channel and you're not going to do a video, you can always let me know what your favorites or what you would say in the comments below. I love hearing that stuff. Part of why I have this channel is because I like talking to people about, especially eyeshadow. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.